Hey everyone, my name is Julia Flynn Seiler, and on behalf of Litquake, thank you all so much for coming to the Lit Crawl San Francisco. Tonight is the closing night of Litquake, San Francisco's literary festival, and we're in the midst of a virtual Lit Crawl, which is running 10:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. with 25 events and featuring 7 cities around the world. The nonprofit festival is nearly 100% free and could not exist without the generosity of our individual donors. If you believe in keeping literature a key component of the San Francisco Bay Area's cultural landscape, please consider dropping us a few dollars. Every little bit helps. We accept donations on Venmo at Litquake, on PayPal at info@litquake.org, or directly at litquake.org. After the event, you'll be asked to fill out a short survey. These surveys are also essential to our efforts to keep the Lit Crawl free. So let's get started. Here is your host for the event, which is When the Streetlights Come On, Grotto writers on the allure, the danger, and the sensual charms of the night. Your hosts tonight are Kevin Smokler and Kristen Cosby. And here's Kristen. Take it away, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to When the Streetlights Come On, Grotto writers on the allure, danger, and sensual charms of the night. I am Kristen Cosby. My esteemed colleague Kevin Smokler and I will be your hosts for this evening. It has been a big year for the Grotto. After 26 years in several different venues, including 14 years at our current location in South Park, the Writers Grotto is going virtual for the remainder of the pandemic. Don't worry, we will still have a full roster of classes available online at sfgrotto.org. In this year of very dark skies, when the streetlights were sometimes on at midday, the mystery of the night remained a draw to artists, perhaps because it shows us so clearly where the light actually is. Despite all the challenges and upheavals of this year, all the Grotto authors you'll be hearing from tonight managed to publish books in 2020, and not just any books, like really excellent books. We are proud and grateful to them for sharing their brilliance with us. So without further ado, Kevin, would you introduce our first reader?
Kristen, it would be my pleasure. Our first reader is Ann Kim. Ann Kim, writing as A.H. Kim, was born in South Korea and immigrated to Ohio as a toddler. She went to Harvard College and Berkeley Law School and is a practicing attorney. She's a proud mother of 2 sons, a cancer survivor, a community volunteer, and a member, of course, of the San Francisco Writers Grotto. She lives in San Francisco with her husband, and A Good Family, which I was privileged to read this year, is her first published novel. Take it away, Ann Kim.
Thanks, Kevin, and hello, everyone. I will be reading a short excerpt from chapter 1, actually the first chapter. It's a little bit excerpted. Okay. They're all drunk as usual. It's the final night of the annual Lindstrom family reunion, the official end of summer, and the last time we'll be together for a while. Everyone's indulged in a few too many Moscow mules and dirty martinis. The kitchen stool behind the Carrera marble counter provides a mezzanine view of the assembled cast. Sam's the one dozing on the couch, his handsome head tilted back, his mouth slightly agape. There's a tiny trickle of drool snaking toward his perfect chin. Gazing at my younger brother takes me back 40 years to when he was a baby sleeping peacefully in his crib. The gentle curves of his eyelids, his long lashes fluttering in rhythm with his dreams, his warm, moist breath smelling sweetly of mother's milk. Like me, Sam isn't a Lindstrom by blood, but at least he's one by marriage. Eva's leaning on Sam and appears to be asleep as well. But it's an act. Eva's a drunk, a high-functioning drunk, but a drunk nonetheless. 5 or 6 drinks isn't nearly enough to knock Eva out for the night, but it's enough to quiet the voices in her head, the voices that remind her she's the older sister, the smart one, Reed, not the pretty one, the woman who squeezed out 3 10-pound babies within a 6-year span and has the flabby belly and sexless marriage to prove it. 5 or 6 drinks is just enough to make Eva think she can seduce her younger sister's husband, even though he has zero attraction to her and is pretty much unconscious to boot. My sister-in-law, Beth, is the drunkest of them all, but she has reason to be. This is Beth's last taste of freedom before the dreaded road trip. The road trip no one dares talk about to her flawless face, but everyone discusses sotto voce in the tastefully appointed guest rooms, countless pantries, and book-lined hallways of the Sunday New York Times featured weekend retreat that Beth painstakingly designed and pretentiously named the Refuge. The rest of the adults already went to bed. These family reunions aren't exactly relaxing, a marathon of daily activities and simmering resentments. It's not easy having to keep up with the Lindstroms when it comes to drinking, darts, Scrabble, or any other pastime that can be turned into a cutthroat competition. Eva nuzzles closer to Sam, continuing to feign sleep, her hand slipping down toward his crotch. It's outrageous. Sam's her sister's husband. Then again, the poor guy deserves to get a little action. It's the family's worst-kept secret that Beth has been frigid ever since she gave birth to their first baby over 5 years ago, and it got worse when their second arrived 2 years later. You have to hand it to Beth. She thought of everything when she designed Le Refuge, filling the home with all the must-have amenities and high-end appliances showcased in the interior design porn magazines she reads so voraciously. Just across the grassy lawn from the main house is the barn-like dorms, outfitted with 4 sets of matching bunk beds and deluxe memory foam mattresses and every amusement the Lindstrom children could ever want. My cell phone buzzes to remind me to go and check on the children. Everyone says it's unnecessary. After all, what could go wrong out here at Le Refuge? But it's my nightly habit. The recycled barnwood floorboards creak on my way up to the dorm's main level. The little girls are already asleep, but the older Lindstrom cousins are piled together like tired puppies on the oversized sectional and watching something on the TV. Standing there, unnoticed by the 4 children, it's magical to observe their unguarded faces. Max, the one male cousin, technically a step-cousin, had been a funny-looking boy, all stuck-out ears and snub nose and sharp elbows, but he's grown into a quirkily handsome young man with wavy ginger hair and softly freckled skin. Meanwhile, the girl cousins have inherited the Lindstrom family's classic beauty, long blonde hair, blue eyes, and graceful ballet figures. Max rests his head on one arm of the sectional, and Stevie, the oldest of the girls, rests hers on the opposite arm, with quite a bit of overlapping in between. "Stop that, you're related," my long-dead mother reprimands the children in my head. But really, what's the fuss? The 2 kids are step-cousins. It's not like they share any blood. Isn't that what matters? Suddenly, I feel old. At 49, I'm the oldest person at the Lindstrom family reunion and the only unmarried adult. Descending the steps of the dorms and crossing the expansive lawn, my feet feel ice cold and slippery against my slip-on shoes. I close my eyes and feel the gentle breeze wafting in from the shore. I take a deep breath, savoring the briny scent of the Chesapeake. I focus my energies on gratitude, on appreciating all the wonderful things in my life, rather than the difficult challenges that await us tomorrow and in the days ahead. As I slowly open my eyes, I hear an owl hooting in the distance. I look upward, and there on the second floor of the main house, backlit by one of the extravagantly perfumed candles that Beth purchases by the case, I see my brother Sam desperately humping Eva in the upstairs guest bathroom.
Thank you, Anne. It is my honor and privilege to introduce our second reader tonight, Roberto Lovato. Roberto is an educator, journalist, and writer based in our very own Writers Grotto of San Francisco, California. He's the author of Unforgetting, a memoir of family, migration, gangs, and revolution in the Americas, just out from HarperCollins. Lovato is also a co-founder of Dignidad Literaria, the movement advocating for equity and literary justice for the more than 60 million Latinx persons left off the bookshelves of the United States and therefore out of the national dialogue. A recipient of a reporting grant from the Pulitzer Center, Lovato has reported on war, violence, and terrorism in Mexico, Venezuela, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Paris, and the United States. Roberto.
Wow, thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Kevin, for hosting us. Thanks to Litquake and to the Grotto, especially the Grotto Lives. Wrote a lot of this book in the Grotto, and I'm grateful to be here. I'm going to be reading from chapter 21 of my book, Unforgetting. And we're in 1991 in San Salvador. I had left San Francisco here in the Mission, where I met a woman whose name is G, which is important. And I'm working by day with displaced and refugee communities, raising money for them. And by night, I'm an urban commando sabotaging infrastructure of the fascist military dictatorship of San Salvador. And let me begin. I got my own shock months later as I was laying in my apartment in San Salvador, sipping some cola champagne, one of the piss gold soft drinks that every Latin American country has. I was reflecting on how much things had changed for me since leaving San Francisco the year before, when the phone rang, an unusual occurrence, given that I lived in a place where few except the compañeras and compañeros escrites knew about. Bueno, may I help you? Hola, Beto. The silky sweet voice sounded familiar, but before my heart leaped, I paused. G? I asked. Yes. Where are you? San Salvador. What? Yes, I'm here. You're here? I said, my voice reaching higher octaves of disbelief. Yes, I remained silent for a moment, stunned at the fact that this woman who publicly represented the FMLN guerrillas had somehow managed to get into the country. The Salvadoran government had her and other publicly identified members of the FMLN on their list of people to detain on site at any airport and border crossing. G could be killed if they caught her here. What are you doing here? I asked. I'm here on some important business and I need to speak with you, she said in her trademark no-nonsense tone. Sure, when and where do you want to meet? Let's meet where the light shines, she said, which was code for Las Antorchas, a restaurant with torches placed all around the edges of the open-air restaurant. I want to know about this special mission almost as much as I simply wanted to see her. I showered, put on some nice clothes, and armed myself with my secret weapon, Jovan Musk Oil, my preferred cologne. I showed up a little late to find a smiling G already there. A white-haired guitarist was playing Ella, a lovely bolero from Mom and Pop's era, in front of a couple at a table nearby. G was looking ever the summer beauty in a black flowered dress that hung on her tight body wonderfully. The Salvadoran sun made her round face look especially radiant. Being G, she rocketed through the niceties, then started in with the reason she'd come. The smell of flat iron beef grilling beneath the thatched palm roof and the fancy blue tropical drinks with the little wooden umbrellas in them gave the restaurant on busy Boulevard de los Héroes a suave, intimate beach vibe made stronger by all the antorchas. So, T, she started, I'm here with some important news. How did you get into the country? I asked her. The compañeros got me some glasses, a wig, and a fake passport, and I came in through the Guatemala border, she said en voz bajita. Wow, that's pretty gutsy. Noting her need to talk about her mission, I asked, so what brings you here? Well, to be honest, you left me in limbo, T. Huh? In limbo? What do you mean? What the fuck is she bringing this up for? Before you left, she said, when we were getting to know each other in San Francisco, you said we were more than friends. You gave me chocolates, you wrote me poetry, and gave me other signs that led me to believe that what you said was true. That's kind of true, I guess, but yet on the other hand, you left things ambiguous, she interjected, like you weren't sure we were after what we were after such beautiful moments we spent together. Okay, yes, I said, still waiting for the larger mission to reveal itself. You know me, T. You know that I like to be clear, said G, sounding like the focused diplomat and explosives expert she was. Yes, you do. You know that I can't stand ambiguity. No, you can't. So I'll just tell you, Tito, I'm in love with you and need to know how you feel about me. I've been living with this ambiguity since last year and want you to be clear with me. I can't keep living like this. Uh-oh. That's what she fucking came for? Me? Fuck. Subversive in war turned out to be also mean subversive in love. My immediate thought, G, came to mind to undermine my game plan of macking on lots of women in wartime El Salvador. I was, after all, 25 years old. But I also recognized our shared desire. I kept looking at her in disbelief, and the rush of memories came back to me. Walking near my old church, talking about opera, feeling like she actually liked me for me, despite feeling like a fucked up kid in the mission. Fuck. So I did the obvious thing any red-blooded revolucionario Salvadoran macho would do in such a potentially explosive situation. Excuse me for a second. I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. Okay, G said in a tone that said, what the fuck? On my way to the bathroom, I walked up to the old guitarist dude playing music in the restaurant and whispered in his ear. Then I went to the bathroom, combed my curly hair, and washed my face before I came out blasting like I was Michael Corleone, entering gangster life at the Bronx Italian restaurant. I went back up to the table. So you want an answer, I asked, standing before her with the guitarist behind me? Here's your answer. The guitarist started playing Sabor a Mi. I'd first learned the lyrics of the classic bolero turned lowrider oldie about the lover's taste when Pop used to play it for Mom. Now I put on Pop's Orphic powers to use myself. I started serenading G. The song ended, and I said, there's your answer. She smiled back and got up and put her face close to mine. We paused to inhale each other's breaths, and then our lips finally touched. We decided to go to a cheap motel used by prostitutes working near Tia Esperanza's house on Cinco de Noviembre Street. Early the next morning, before dawn, as we floated out of the motel high on new love, we were greeted by the sight of soldiers who were about a block and a half away and coming our way. We turned and walked quickly in the opposite direction, hoping that a taxi or some other vehicle might come in our direction. But there were no cars in sight. An eternity passed before we saw the lights of a vehicle approaching. Surely our last opportunity to escape torture and likely death. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Roberto. Oh, that's fantastic. It's like your book is on my nightstand right now. I haven't started reading it, but it's almost it's like it's crackling, like it's just been lit on fire by what you said. So, man, that's exciting. We have just a couple of announcements before our final reader. I wanted to, and Kristen and I will both give these. First, fall classes are underway at the Grotto. Among the offerings are 2 more write-ins next Wednesday and Friday, which of course take place on Zoom, as well as the Art of Revision class with taught by our own Audrey Ferber, and also Crafting the Literature of Turbulent Times with Roberto Lovato, who just read. Stay tuned for our full roster of winter classes coming soon to sfgrotto.org, where you will be able to get all the information once our winter classes are announced.
Also, don't forget to support these authors by finding their works in your nearest independent bookstore or online at bookshop.org. Additionally, all 6 Lit Start books written by the Writers Grotto about the craft of writing can be found in the same places. Check out Writing Action by our next reader, Bonnie Tsui, as well as Writing Memoir, Writing Sci-Fi and Fantasy, and more at sfgrotto.org. Again, all of which can be ordered via your local bookstore or bookshop.org.
And finally, Rooted and Written, one of the crown jewels of the Grotto, our 2nd annual conference by and for writers of color, wraps up tomorrow with participants in the conference reading, of course, on Zoom, and a closing event at 2:30 p.m. If you would like to listen and attend, email rootedwritten@gmail.com to request a link.
And that brings us to our final reader tonight. Bonnie Tsui is a journalist and longtime contributor to the New York Times. She is the author of American Chinatown, winner of the Asian Pacific American Award for Literature and a San Francisco Chronicle bestseller. Her new book, Why We Swim, was published by Algonquin Books in April 2020. It was a New York Times Book Review Editor's Choice, a Boston Globe bestseller, and an LA Times Book Club pick and bestseller. Bonnie will be publishing her first children's book, Sarah and the Big Wave, about big wave women surfers in 2021. Take it away, Bonnie.
Thanks, Kristen. Thank you to the Grotto. Thank you to Litquake. Just have to say that it's not the same not to be mashed up against you guys in a sweaty bar in the Mission, but we're going to close our eyes and make do and pretend that this is happening. So, I just love you all. I'm going to read from the first few pages of Why We Swim, and the section is called Survival. An old map from when this place was first settled shows monsters everywhere once the shore gives out. Carl Phillips, Swimming. One night over dinner, my husband tells me a story he heard about a boat in the North Atlantic and a man who should have drowned. Late on the evening of March 11, 1984, a fishing trawler was working on calm seas 3 miles east of the island of Heimaey, part of an archipelago off the south coast of Iceland. The sky was clear, the air a wintry 28 degrees Fahrenheit. There were 5 crew aboard the vessel. Goodlooker Frid Thorson, the boat's mate, was just 22 years old. He had taken a break and was asleep below deck when he was woken up by the cook, who told him that the trawling gear had snagged on the sea bottom. Soon after Frid Thorson arrived on deck, he saw that the crew were trying to winch up the gear. One of the trawl wires was taut over the side, pulling the boat over so far that the sea had begun to wash through the railings. Frid Thorson shouted a warning. The captain, Hjortur Jonsson, gave instructions to slacken the winch, but then it jammed. A swell ran under the boat, overturning it, and the sailors found themselves pitched into the freezing sea. 2 of the men drowned almost immediately, but the remaining 3, including Frid Thorson, managed to grab hold of the boat's keel. The vessel quickly began to sink, and they could not release the emergency raft. In the 41-degree water, they would have had less than half an hour before hypothermia claimed them. The 3 began to swim toward the shore. Within minutes, only 2 remained, Jonsson and Frid Thorson. The 2 men called to one another as they swam to spur each other on. Then Jonsson stopped responding. Frid Thorson, wearing blue work pants, a red flannel shirt, and a thin sweater, kept swimming and found himself talking to seagulls to stay awake. A boat came within 350 feet of him and he shouted as loud as he could, but it sailed away. He swam backstroke, his eyes trained on the lighthouse at the southern end of the island. Eventually, he heard the surf crashing on the coast. He prayed he would not get obliterated on the rocks. He found himself up against the base of a steep cliff, exhausted and terribly thirsty, unable to feel any of his extremities. With no way to climb up, he turned back to the sea, adjusted course, and swam farther south, where he came ashore and made his way slowly across a spiky, snow-covered lava field over a mile into town, stopping to punch through an inch-thick layer of ice on a sheep cistern to get a drink of water. When he finally arrived in town, it seemed to him a splendid dream vision of life. He knocked on the door of the first home he saw with lights on. He was barefoot and covered in frost. Behind him was a trail of bloody footprints on the sidewalk leading up to the house. This is a true story. In the end, Frid Thorson survived 6 hours in frigid seas and swam more than 3.5 miles to land. When he arrived at the hospital, doctors were unable to discern his pulse, and yet he showed no signs of hypothermia, only dehydration. Frid Thorson's body, it turns out, resembled a seal's. Researchers later determined that he was insulated by 14 millimeters of fat, 2 or 3 times the normal human thickness, and more solid. This man was more marine mammal than terrestrial. He had a biological quirk that saved him. It kept him warm, buoyant, and able to keep swimming. Many called him a real-life selkie, that half-man, half-seal figure of Icelandic and Scottish lore. To me, he is a living reminder that we are not so far removed from the sea. As humans, we walk the earth. We are land creatures with an aquatic past. I'm drawn to stories like Fridthorson's because I want to know what remains of that past today. In a way, all swimming stories, from the naiads of Greek myth to the long-distance swimmer Diana Naiad, who swam from Cuba to Florida in 2013, are attempts to reacquaint our land-adapted selves with water. We humans are not natural-born swimmers, but we have figured out ways to reclaim abilities that existed before that land-sea split in our evolution, hundreds of millions of years ago. Why do we swim when evolution has shaped us to excel on land by running down prey until it drops from exhaustion? Of course it has to do with survival. Somewhere along the way, swimming helped us to get from one prehistoric lakeshore to another and escape predators of our own, to dive for that trove of bigger shellfish and to get to new sources of food, to venture across oceans and settle new lands, to navigate all manner of aquatic perils and to see swimming as a source of joy, pleasure, achievement, to arrive at this day to talk about why we swim. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. And thank you again to all our wonderful readers. This is all we got for you tonight, folks. But be safe and buy books and check us out at the Grotto.
And keep reading, keep writing, keep paying attention to your friends doing great things, and keep believing. We will see you all very soon, we promise. Good night, everyone.